The smallest ship in the fleet, the docking bay of the massive Zeridian battleship Sovereign's Edge stretched out like a metal canyon, its walls lined with warships that dwarfed anything humanity had ever built. Captain Marcus Webb stood on the boarding ramp of the Defiant, Earth's newest and supposedly most advanced vessel, feeling like a child with a toy boat in an ocean of giants. The Defiant was barely 200 meters long, a sleek silver needle compared to the kilometer-long behemoths surrounding it. Webb's crew of 30 humans looked equally out of place among the towering alien warriors filing past them. The Zeridians stood 3 meters tall, their crystalline armor catching the harsh station lights. The Vorthic delegation moved like living shadows, their dark carapaces clicking with each step. Even the peaceful Althari, despite their diplomatic nature, possessed an elegant grace that made humans seem clumsy by comparison. "Captain Webb," a voice rumbled behind him like distant thunder. Webb turned to face High Admiral Kethfer, the Zeridian fleet commander whose reputation for crushing rebellions was known across 12 systems. The alien's faceted eyes studied the human with what might have been amusement. "Your vessel is ... compact." A ripple of what Webb assumed was laughter passed through the assembled alien officers. Lieutenant Jamie Torres, his second in command, stepped closer, her hand instinctively moving toward her sidearm. Webb placed a restraining hand on her shoulder. "She may be small, Admiral, but she's fast and she's tough," Webb replied evenly. "Sometimes the smallest ship can make the biggest difference." The Vorthic delegation leader, a creature called Nexus Prime, clicked its mandibles in what their translator rendered as skeptical amusement. "Your species has been in space for barely a century, human. The Galactic Defense Coalition has protected these systems for millennia. What could you possibly offer that we cannot accomplish with superior numbers and firepower?" Before Webb could respond, the station's alert klaxons began wailing. Red emergency lights bathed the docking bay as a holographic display materialized. In the center of the gathering, the three-dimensional image showed a section of space near the Kepler mining colony, where dozens of unidentified ships were emerging from hyperspace. "Scarron raiders," Admiral Kethfer growled, his crystalline features darkening. 3 full war fleets. "They've caught us during the diplomatic summit, when most of our forces are concentrated here." The assembled officers began speaking rapidly, in their native languages, the universal translators struggling to keep up with the overlapping conversations. Webb studied the tactical display, his mind automatically calculating vectors, distances, and response times. "Admiral," he said, raising his voice above the chaos, "how long until your main battle fleets can reach Kepler?" 14 hours minimum. Kethfer replied grimly. "The mining colony has perhaps 6 hours before it falls." Webb looked at the display again, then at his small crew. Torres met his eyes and nodded almost imperceptibly. They both knew what he was thinking. "The Defiant can reach Kepler in 4 hours, Webb announced. The alien officers fell silent. Nexus Prime's translator crackled with what sounded like derision. 1 ship against 3 fleets? This is either courage or stupidity, human." Webb smiled grimly. "On Earth, we call it both." Against impossible odds, the journey to Kepler colony passed in tense silence aboard the Defiant. Webb stood on the bridge, watching the stars streak past as his ship pushed its hyperspace engines to maximum output. His crew of 30 worked with quiet efficiency, each person knowing their role in what many would call a suicide mission. "Captain," called out Navigation Officer Chun Liu from his station, "we're picking up long-range sensor data from Kepler. The Scarran fleets have already begun their attack." The main display showed the horrifying reality. 3 massive fleets, each composed of hundreds of ships, had surrounded the mining colony. The station's defensive platforms were firing desperately, but they were vastly outnumbered. Small evacuation ships were trying to escape, only to be hunted down by Scaran fighters. "How many colonists?" Webb asked quietly. 40,000, replied Communications Officer Maria Santos. "Mix of humans, Zeridians, and Aldari families." Torres moved to stand beside her captain. "Marcus, we can't save them all. Our weapons are designed for ship-to-ship combat, not fleet engagements." Webb studied the tactical display, his mind working through possibilities. The Scarans were known for their overwhelming numbers and brutal tactics, but they had weaknesses. They relied on pack-hunting strategies, preferring to surround and overwhelm their enemies rather than engage in direct combat. "We're not going to fight them head-on," Webb said finally. "We're going to make them fight each other." He turned to address the bridge crew. "The Scarans communicate through quantum entanglement networks. Their fleet coordination is their greatest strength, but it's also their weakness. If we can disrupt those networks at just the right moment, we can turn their numbers against them." Engineering Chief Robert Kim looked up from his console. "Captain, our electronic warfare capabilities are limited. We'd need to get dangerously close to their command ships." "Then that's what we'll do," Webb replied. "Tactical analysis shows they're using a standard Predator formation. 3 command ships, each controlling one fleet section. If we can mask our approach using the colony's sensor shadows and hit all 3 simultaneously." "It's never been attempted," Torres said. "The timing would have to be perfect." Webb looked around at his crew. These weren't the genetically enhanced warriors of the Zeridians or the highly evolved minds of the Aldari. They were ordinary humans, mechanics and pilots and engineers who had volunteered for this mission knowing the odds. But in their eyes, he saw something the galaxy's elder races had perhaps forgotten: the stubborn refusal to accept defeat. "Chun, plot an intercept course that keeps us in the colony's sensor shadow. Maria, prepare the quantum disruption packages. Rob, I need everything our engines can give us." The Defiant dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler system, immediately going to stealth mode. The ship's advanced cloaking technology, developed from reverse-engineered alien tech and human innovation, made them nearly invisible to conventional sensors. On the main screen, the battle for Kepler colony raged. The mining station's shields were failing, its defensive platforms falling silent one by one. Evacuation ships scattered like frightened fish as Scaran fighters swooped among them. "There," Webb pointed to the tactical display. "The 3 command ships are positioned in a triangular formation around the colony. They're maintaining formation discipline even during the attack." "That's their mistake," Torres observed. "They're predictable." Webb nodded. "Rob, how long can our cloak hold if we go to maximum thrust?" "Maybe 10 minutes before the power drain becomes critical," Kim replied. "That'll have to be enough. Shun, take us in. Target the closest command ship first." The Defiant accelerated toward the nearest Scaran command vessel, a massive dreadnought bristling with weapons. As they approached, the scale of the enemy became apparent. The command ship was over 2 kilometers long, its hull scarred from countless battles. "Quantum disruption package ready," Santos reported. "Deploy on my mark," Webb said, watching the range counter tick down. 3.2. Mark, the small. Device shot from the Defiant's launcher, attaching itself to the Scaran ship's communication array. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the command ship's coordinated fire patterns began to waver as its connection to the fleet flickered. "1 down, 2 to go," Webb said grimly. "Next target." But their cloak was failing, and the Scarans were beginning to notice something was wrong. The art of human war alarms began blaring throughout the Scaran fleet as their quantum communication networks started experiencing interference. On the bridge of the Defiant, Captain Webb watched with grim satisfaction as enemy formations began to lose their deadly coordination. "Second command ship in range," reported Shen Liu. sweat beading on his forehead as he pushed the navigation systems to their limits. The ship's cloak was flickering now, power cells draining rapidly from the sustained high-speed approach. Through the view screen, Webb could see Scarran fighters beginning to turn their attention away from the fleeing evacuation ships. The disruption of their first command ship had created confusion in their attack patterns, but it wouldn't last long. "Maria, status on the second disruption package?" Webb called out. "Ready to deploy, Captain," Santos replied, her fingers dancing. Over her console. "But we're starting to show up on their sensors. They know something's out here." The second Scarran command ship loomed before them, its weapon arrays beginning to track in their direction. These vessels were designed to coordinate the attacks of hundreds of smaller ships, not to engage in direct combat, but they were still dangerous. "Deploy the package and get us out of here," Webb ordered. The second quantum disruption device shot toward its target just as the enemy ship's weapons opened fire. Energy beams lanced through space where the Defiant had been moments before, as Chun-Lu threw the ship into an evasive spiral. "Direct hit on their communications array," Torres reported from the tactical station. "2 command ships down, but—" Captain ... Look at this. The main display showed the effect of their attacks on the Scarran fleet. Without central coordination, the 3 fleet sections were beginning to interfere with each other. Ships designed to work in perfect harmony were now firing across each other's attack vectors, some even targeting vessels from their own force in the confusion. "It's working," Kim breathed from the engineering station. "They're so used to coordinated attacks, they don't know how to function independently." But their celebration was short-lived. The third command ship, learning from the fate of its companions, had withdrawn deeper into the fleet formation, surrounding itself with protective screens of smaller vessels. "Cloak is down to 15% power," Kim reported. "We can't maintain stealth much longer." Webb studied the tactical display, his mind racing through options. The third command ship was well protected, but without it, the Scarran fleet would remain in chaos long enough for the Galactic Defense Coalition reinforcements to arrive. "What if we don't go to them?" he said finally. "What if we make them come to us?" Torres looked at him with growing understanding. "The mining platform. If we can lure the command ship close to the colony's defensive grid—" "The remaining platforms are nearly depleted," Santos interjected. "They might have 1 or 2 shots left. Then we'll make them count," Webb decided. "Chun, set course for the mining platform. Maximum burn, no stealth." "Captain, that's going to put us right in the middle of their fleet," Lou protested. "Exactly." Webb smiled grimly. Sometimes the best place to hide is right in plain sight. The Defiant burst from its failing cloak like a silver arrow, racing directly toward the heavily damaged Kepler colony. Scarran fighters immediately swarmed toward them, but the human ship's superior speed and maneuverability allowed it to weave between the larger vessels. "They're following us," Torres reported, watching the sensor displays. "The command ship is moving to intercept." "Perfect," Webb said. "Maria, open a channel to the mining platform." The face of Platform Commander Yalith, an elderly Aldari with deep worry lines around her large eyes, appeared on the screen. Behind her, smoke filled the command center and sparks flew from damaged consoles. "Human vessel, this is madness," she said. "Our weapons are nearly exhausted. Commander, I need you to target the large ship following us. Wait until it's at minimum range, then fire everything you have left." "That will leave us completely defenseless," Yolith protested. "Trust me," Webb said simply. The Defiant raced toward the mining platform with the Scarran command ship in pursuit, hundreds of smaller enemy vessels following in its wake. At the last moment, Webb ordered Chun to pull up sharply, sending their ship skimming over the platform's surface. The Scarran command ship, focused on its prey, followed too closely. "Now," Webb shouted. The mining platform's remaining defensive weapons fired simultaneously, their combined energy striking the command ship's shields at point-blank range. The massive vessel staggered, its shields failing, but it was still functional. Not enough, Torres said desperately. But Webb was already moving. Rob, transfer all power from life support to the main engines. Maria, prepare our entire missile complement for launch. Captain, that's everything we have, Santos protested. Sometimes everything is exactly what you need to give. Webb replied when the strong need the small the Defiant hung motionless for. A split second as every available joule of power flowed into its engines. The bridge lights dimmed, life support systems switched to emergency power, and even the artificial gravity fluctuated. But when Shenlu engaged the engines, the small human ship shot forward like a guided missile. All weapons locked on target. Torres reported, her voice steady despite the desperate situation. Firing solution confirmed. The scaring command ship, damaged but still dangerous, was trying to withdraw from the mining platform's defensive range. Its escort fighters formed a protective screen around it, but they were positioned to defend against external threats. Not a single ship emerging from beneath them. Fire everything, Webb ordered. The Defiant's entire missile complement launched. Simultaneously, 24 guided projectiles streaking toward the enemy command ship. The Scaran vessel's point defense systems engaged frantically, destroying most of the incoming missiles, but 3 got through. The explosions blossomed along. The command ship's hull like deadly flowers, and its quantum communication array finally went dark. Across the Scaran fleet, the last vestige of coordination disappeared. Command network is completely down, Santos reported with obvious relief. The entire enemy fleet is operating independently now. On the main display, the result was immediate and dramatic. Without central coordination, the 3 Scaran fleet sections were no longer attacking as a unified force. Some ships continued to engage the mining platform. Others turned to pursue evacuation vessels, and still others began attacking targets that had already been claimed by different fleet sections. They're fighting each other, Kim observed with amazement. Their own pack instincts are turning them against each other. But the celebration was premature. The Defiant had exhausted its offensive capabilities, and hundreds of Scaran ships still filled the system. Several smaller vessels had noticed the human ship and were closing in for the kill. Weapons are depleted, engines are running on emergency. Power, and we have multiple bogies inbound, Torres reported calmly. Captain, we should consider evacuation procedures. Webb looked around at his crew. 30 humans who had volunteered to face impossible odds to save strangers. They had succeeded in disrupting the Scaran attack, but their own ship was defenseless. No, he said quietly. We stay with the ship. If this is how humanity makes its mark in the galaxy, then we go down fighting. But before the approaching Scaran fighters could reach them, space around the Defiant suddenly filled with new contacts. Massive shapes dropped out of hyperspace, their hulls gleaming with the crystalline armor of the Zeridian Defense Force. This is Admiral Kethfor aboard the Sovereign's Edge, came the familiar rumbling voice over the communications channel. Human vessel, you are ordered to withdraw to a safe distance immediately. Admiral? Webb said, confused. How did you get here so fast? We departed the moment you left for Kepler, Kethva replied. Did you think the Galactic Defense Coalition would allow one small ship to face this threat alone? The truth hit Webb. Like a physical blow. You followed us. You were always planning to come. Your vessel's actions allowed us to approach undetected while the enemy was focused on you, the Admiral confirmed. The Scaran fleet is in complete disarray. This battle is already won. As if to confirm his words, the Zeridian battle fleet opened fire on the confused Scaran forces. With their command structure destroyed and their formations broken, The raiders were easy targets for the coordinated assault of the galactic powers. But why? Torres asked over the com channel. Why let us go first if you are coming anyway? There was a long pause before Kethfer answered. Because we needed to see what humans would do when faced with impossible odds. The galaxy has watched your species for decades, wondering if you possess the qualities necessary for true membership in the Coalition. On the main screen, Scaran ships were fleeing in all directions as the Zeridian fleet systematically dismantled their attack force. The mining colony was safe. The evacuation ships were being escorted to secure positions, and the immediate threat was over. And what did you conclude, Admiral? Webb asked. That perhaps it is not the size of the ship that matters, Kethvar replied, but the size of the courage within it. He price of respect 3 days after the Battle of Kepler Colony. Captain Webb stood once again in the docking bay of the Sovereign's Edge. But this time, the atmosphere was completely different. Instead of dismissive glances and barely concealed amusement, the assembled alien officers watched him with something approaching reverence, that the Defiant had been repaired and restocked, its small frame looking no less humble among the massive Coalition warships. But Webb noticed that several alien crew members now paused to study his ship as they passed, pointing out details of its design to their companions. Captain Webb, Admiral Kethfor approached, his crystalline features reflecting the overhead. Lights. The Coalition Council has reviewed the engagement reports from Kepler. Your tactical innovation has been studied by our finest military strategists. Beside the Admiral stood Nexus Prime, the Vorthik delegation leader who had questioned humanity's worth just days before. The insectoid being's mandibles clicked in what the translator rendered as respectful acknowledgement. Your species' approach to warfare is unconventional, Nexus Prime admitted. We have always believed that superior firepower and numbers determine victory. You have shown us that superior thinking can overcome both. Webb looked around at the gathering of alien officers, representatives from a dozen species, each commanding fleets that dwarfed Earth's entire space navy, were listening to his words with careful attention. On Earth, we have a saying, Webb began, David and Goliath. Sometimes the smallest fighter can defeat the largest enemy, not through strength, but through courage and clever thinking. Your quantum disruption tactics have already been incorporated into Coalition standard procedures, Admiral Kethfor noted. The Council has also voted to fast-track humanity's application for full Coalition membership. Lieutenant Torres stepped forward from the human delegation. What does that mean for Earth? It was High Counselor Thizes of the Aldery who answered, her melodious voice carrying across the docking bay. It means humanity will have access to Coalition technology, trade networks, and military support. It means Earth will have a voice in galactic affairs. But more importantly, added Admiral Kethfer, it means the galaxy has recognized that courage and ingenuity are not measured in meters or tonnage. Webb felt a surge of pride, not just for himself or his crew, but for his entire species. Humanity had been tested and found worthy. They had proven that even the smallest player could make the biggest difference when they refused to accept defeat. There is one more matter, Nexus Prime said, its translator crackling with what might have been amusement. The Council has also voted to commission humanity's first capital ship. It will be built using the finest Coalition technology, but designed according to human specifications. How large? Webb asked, curious. Large enough to carry 12 ships the size of the Defiant, Admiral Kethvar replied. It will serve as the flagship of Earth's contribution to the Coalition Defense Force. Webb smiled, imagining the possibilities. A ship built with human innovation and alien technology, crewed by humans who had learned that size mattered less. Then heart, what will you call it? Torres asked. Webb looked out through the docking bays, transparent aluminum windows at the stars beyond. Somewhere out there, Earth waited for news of humanity's first real test among the galactic powers. They had passed that test not through superior strength or technology, but through the very human traits of stubborn courage and creative thinking. "The indomitable," he said finally, "because that's what we are, indomitable." The assembled alien officers made various sounds and gestures of approval. They had learned something important about humanity in the fires of battle, that the smallest ship could indeed make the biggest difference, if it carried within it the refusal to surrender and the wisdom to fight smart rather than fight hard. As the ceremony concluded and the various delegations began to disperse, Admiral Kethvar approached Webb one final time. "Captain," a massive Zeridian said quietly, "there is something else. The Council has offered you command of the new capital ship when it is completed." Webb considered the offer. Command of humanity's first major warship would be an honor beyond measure, but he looked back at the Defiant, small and unremarkable among the giants surrounding it. "Thank you, Admiral, but I think I'll stay with my current ship," he said finally. "Someone needs to teach the galaxy that the smallest vessels can still surprise you." Kethvar's faceted eyes gleamed with what Webb had learned to recognize as Zeridian approval. "That, Captain Webb, is exactly why humanity belongs among the stars." As Webb and his crew prepared to return to the Defiant, he reflected on the journey that had brought them here. They had started as the weakest ship in the fleet, dismissed and underestimated by species that had ruled the galaxy for millennia, but they had proven something important. That strength isn't measured in size or firepower alone. Sometimes the greatest strength comes from refusing to accept that you're too small to make a difference. The Defiant departed the Sovereign's Edge with new orders, new allies, and new respect. Behind them, they left a galaxy that had learned an important lesson about humanity. And ahead of them lay the stars, infinite and full of possibilities for a species that had just proven it belonged among them.